We flee from being alone as if it were a punishment. Yet Seneca once wrote that we must retreat into ourselves to discover how rich we are already. This is the great paradox of solitude. It is not an empty space to be filled, but a profound power to be unlocked. When you truly learn to be with yourself, a fundamental shift occurs in your very personality. This transformation is not for the faint of heart. It is terrifyingly powerful. We will walk through the core Stoic principles that guide this metamorphosis. By the end, you will understand how to forge an unshakable self-mastery and a freedom that no external circumstance can take from you. What is the first mask that falls away when you are left with only your own mind? The first thing you lose in true solitude is the need for everyone else's applause. That constant background hum of wondering what people think of you simply goes silent. It has to, because there is no one there to perform for. This is where we encounter a foundational Stoic truth, the division between what is within our power and what is not. Your own judgments, your choices, your values, these are yours to command. The opinions, praise, or criticism from others, these are as fickle as the weather, entirely outside your control. The philosopher Epictetus put it with brutal clarity in his Enchiridion, writing that if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said, but answer, "He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone." This is not about becoming arrogant or dismissive, but about re-anchoring your sense of worth to a foundation you actually own. Think of the modern reflex, the hand twitching toward a phone to see if a post got likes, the mental energy spent crafting an image for an audience. Now picture sitting in a quiet room with only your own thoughts for company. The phone is dark, the audience has vanished. In that silence, the question shifts from, "What do they think of me?" to a far more potent one, "What do I think of myself?" This is the mental shift, the shedding of a layer that was never truly yours to begin with. Where in your own life do you feel that pull the strongest? That subtle dependency on a thumbs up or approving comment to feel that your day or your idea was a success? What happens when the only voice left in the room is your own? That initial silence is rarely peaceful. It is often crowded, loud, and uncomfortable. With nowhere to run and no screen to scroll, you are left alone with the one person you have been trained to avoid, yourself. This is the moment of unavoidable confrontation. Your anxieties, your regrets, the harsh judgments you hold about your own life, they all rise to the surface, demanding to be heard. This is not a sign that you are broken. It is the prerequisite for true self-examination, a practice the Stoics considered as vital as physical training. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, in his private writings known as the Meditations, constantly reminded himself of this power. He wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. But this is altogether unphilosophical when you can, at any time, retreat into your own mind. No place is more tranquil or free from trouble than your own soul." He was not describing a spa day for the mind. He was pointing to a disciplined retreat, a deliberate turning inward to face the chaos, and through that very act impose order upon it. This is the Stoic practice of the nightly review, where you sit with your own actions and thoughts from the day, not to punish yourself, but to understand your patterns and where you strayed from your own principles. Think of the last time you tried to simply sit in silence, perhaps to meditate. The mind rebels. It serves up a parade of every awkward conversation, every undone task, every fear about tomorrow. The instinct is to flee, to grab your phone, to do anything but sit with that internal noise. But what if you stayed? What if, instead of fighting the inner critic, you simply allowed it to speak, and then, like a Stoic philosopher, you questioned its claims. Is that voice speaking the truth, or is it just a tired, fearful habit? This is where the terrifying power begins to form. By persisting through the discomfort, you are not erased by your inner critic. You learn its language, you see that its power was only as strong as your willingness to run from it. When you stop running, you can finally start building. So, when you find yourself alone with your thoughts, what is the one thing your inner critic always seems to whisper to you? The accusation or fear that surfaces the moment the distractions fade away. In solitude, there are no excuses left. The boss did not make you angry. The traffic did not ruin your morning. The silence mercilessly reveals that your frustration, your resentment, your entire emotional state is a choice you have made. This is the birth of radical self-accountability, the terrifying moment you realize you are the sole architect of your inner world. The Stoics had a profound term for this ultimate inner faculty, your power of choice, which they called proherses. This is your moral character, your capacity for judgment, the very core of what is truly within your control. Everything else, from your reputation to your physical health, resides in the external realm of things not up to us. Solitude strips away every crutch we use to avoid this fundamental truth. There is no one to complain to, no one to blame, no distraction potent enough to obscure the reality that you are holding the reins to your own mind. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood powerlessness intimately, put it with unflinching clarity. He said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments about them." For example, death is nothing terrible, or else it would have seemed so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our judgment that death is terrible. Your judgment is the lens through which you see the world, and in solitude, you are forced to clean that lens yourself. Consider a typical stressful day. You wake up late, spill coffee on your shirt, get stuck in terrible traffic, and then receive a harsh email from your boss. The automatic story you tell yourself is that these external events ruined your day. You are the victim of a chaotic universe. Now, place that same sequence of events into a day of cultivated solitude. There is no one to vent to. There is only you sitting with the aftermath. In that quiet, a new question emerges. Did the traffic make you angry, or did you choose to respond to the delay with anger? Did the email force you into despair, or did you assent to the interpretation that it was a catastrophic blow? This is not about suppressing emotions, but about recognizing your own agency in them. You begin to see that between an event and your reaction, there exists a space, however small, and in that space lies your freedom and your power to choose a different response. What is one situation in your own life where you consistently find yourself blaming an external person or circumstance for your frustration? And if you were to look into that quiet space of solitude, what would it mean to take full ownership of your reaction instead? The silence isn't empty, it's full of everything you've been avoiding. This unsettling quiet is the raw material of presence. We spend our lives fleeing this very moment, lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, and solitude removes every possible exit. This is where Stoic tranquility finds its foothold, not by escaping the present, but by sinking into it completely. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must confine ourselves to the present, accepting what is given and acting with justice toward the people we encounter now. This is the core of the practice, to accept the current moment without layering it with your frantic judgments. Your mind, as Seneca observed, must be called back from its wandering and settled where it belongs, right here. It is unsteady and never comes to rest, he wrote, but gives its wandering free rein. Our task is to stop it, to pull it back from its circling flight. You can test this for yourself right now. Sit in a chair and commit to 5 minutes of pure silence. Do not reach for your phone. Do not plan your dinner. Simply observe the rhythm of your own breath or the subtle sounds in the room around you. Within seconds, you will feel a powerful, almost physical pull toward distraction. An itch to check a notification, a memory of an awkward conversation, a wave of worry about a task left undone. This is the moment of choice. The practice is not to achieve a blank, peaceful mind, but to notice the chaos without getting swept away by it. Each time you gently guide your attention back to your breath, you are performing a Stoic exercise. You are training your proherses, your power of choice, to anchor itself in what is actually happening, rather than in the stories your mind is spinning. This simple act is deceptively powerful. It is in this space that you realize your anxiety is not a permanent part of you, but a thought that you can observe and release. Your resentment is not a fact of the universe, but a narrative you have the power to rewrite. By sitting in the quiet and meeting your own mind without judgment, you stop fighting reality and start working with it. You discover that the present moment, no matter how ordinary or uncomfortable, is the only place where you are truly alive and truly free. What would you hear in that 5 minutes of silence? What is the first thought or feeling that tries to command your attention the moment you stop moving? Solitude teaches you true power by showing you how little you actually control. That fundamental Stoic distinction, the one between what is up to us and what is not, becomes a lived reality, not just a philosophical idea. When you are alone, you are confronted with the sheer number of things you cannot command. You cannot control the past, the actions of others, the outcome of your projects, or even the next thought that pops into your head. The opening line of Epictetus's Enchiridion lays it out with devastating simplicity. Some things are up to us and some are not up to us. Our opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions are within our power. Our bodies, our property, our reputations, and our public offices are not. This is not a call to passivity, but a strategic map for where to direct your energy. The anxiety we feel so often is a direct result of fighting this reality, of exhausting ourselves trying to command the uncommandable. Think of the mental energy spent trying to manage a partner's mood, or the sleepless nights worrying about a future job interview. In solitude, there is no partner to manage and no interview to rehearse. There is only you facing the simple, stark truth that these outcomes were never yours to decide. This realization is not a defeat, it is a liberation. It is the gateway to what the Stoics called amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is not about resigning yourself to a miserable life, but about embracing every single thing that happens as the necessary raw material for your growth and your virtue. The obstacle, as Marcus Aurelius would say, becomes the way. The frustration you feel when a plan falls apart is no longer a sign that the universe is against you, but an invitation to practice patience. The criticism you receive is not a personal attack to be deflected, but a piece of information to be examined with detachment. In the quiet, you stop trying to bend the world to your will and start asking a far more powerful question. Given this reality, what is the best possible response I can choose? What is one thing you have been trying to control this week, something that is ultimately outside your power? Perhaps it is a family member's decision, the result of a project, or the opinion of a colleague. Now, imagine the weight that would lift from your shoulders if you could fully accept that it is not yours to command, and instead pour all that saved energy into the one thing that is, your own character and your next right action. Solitude is the whetstone on which your judgment is sharpened. In that quiet space, the constant friction of other people's voices and the world's expectations slowly grinds away the dullness of assumption and reactivity, leaving behind a blade of perception that is clean, sharp, and precise. This is the core of Stoic wisdom, the ability to see the world not as we wish it to be or as others tell us it is, but as it truly is. When you are alone, you are forced to confront the raw data of your life without the comforting or distressing commentary of the crowd. Marcus Aurelius dedicated his life to this practice, urging himself to strip away the story and see the thing itself. He wrote, "Do not elaborate to yourself beyond what your initial impressions report." If you are pained by any external thing, it is not the thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. In solitude, you practice wiping out the judgment again and again to see what remains. Consider a major life decision like changing careers. When you are immersed in the social world, your choice becomes a cacophony of other people's fears and ambitions. Your parents worry about stability, your friends talk about prestige, and the collective voice of society whispers a definition of success that may have nothing to do with your own nature. The decision becomes clouded, almost impossible to see clearly. Now, imagine making that same decision after a period of deliberate, solitary reflection. The voices have faded. You are left with the bare facts of the situation, your own skills, your genuine desires, and the core Stoic question: is this path aligned with virtue? Is it just courageous, temperate, and wise? The answer that emerges from that silence is not always easy, but it is unmistakably your own. It carries a weight and a clarity that a committee decision can never possess. This sharpened discernment then flows into every small choice of your day. You begin to notice when you are about to agree with someone just to be polite, or when you are buying something not out of need but from an unspoken social pressure. That inner blade of judgment makes a clean cut, separating your authentic will from the borrowed desires you have collected over a lifetime. Think back to a recent decision you made, perhaps a purchase you made, a commitment you agreed to, or even a strong opinion you voiced. Can you trace its origin? Was it a genuine expression of your own values and reasoned judgment? Or was it a whisper you inherited from someone else, an echo you mistook for your own voice? When no one is watching, what do you truly value? The silence of solitude does more than quiet the noise of others. It slowly dissolves the phantom values you have absorbed by osmosis. For years, you may have chased the goals society handed you, the ladder of promotions, the size of a house, the number of followers. These are external markers, and they are utterly silent in an empty room. Left alone, you are confronted with a more honest inventory of your soul. This is where you begin the essential work of building a value system that is yours alone, forged not for show, but for the integrity of your own character. The Stoics called this the pursuit of virtue, and they distilled it into 4 cardinal pillars: wisdom to see the world clearly, courage to act rightly in the face of fear, justice in your dealings with others, and temperance, the self-command to master your desires and aversions. Seneca wrote powerfully on this distinction in his letters, observing how foolish it is to live by another man's eyes. He said, "We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it." This wastefulness comes from living a life that is not our own, chasing specters of success that leave us empty. Imagine someone, after years of striving, finally lands the prestigious, high-paying job they were told to want. The initial thrill fades quickly in the quiet of their apartment. The corner office feels distant, the title rings hollow. In solitude, the truth emerges that this path was chosen for the applause it would generate, not for the person it would help them become. The realization is not one of failure, but of liberation. They begin to see that a life of service, or of deep personal mastery in a craft, or of simple presence with family, aligns with a far deeper, more resonant set of principles. This is not about quitting your job, but about refounding your reasons for being there. Is it for the external validation, or is it an expression of your courage, your wisdom, your capacity for justice? The process is deliberate. It requires you to sit with a blank page and ask the most direct question possible. What are the 3 things I hold most sacred? Not what should I value, but what do I, in my quietest moments, actually prize? Is it authenticity? Is it compassion? Is it freedom? Then the harder question, do my daily actions, my conversations, my use of time, reflect these professed values? Or does a chasm exist between the person you perform for the world and the one you are when the performance is over? This is the terrifying power of an independent value system. It demands that you live by your own code, even when, and especially when, no one is there to see it. Boredom is not the enemy, it is the incubator of your best ideas. We are conditioned to see an empty afternoon or a quiet moment as a vacuum to be filled, a problem to be solved with another podcast, another scroll, another hit of novelty. But from a Stoic perspective, this void is not empty at all. It is a fertile field left fallow so that something original can finally take root. Constant stimulation is like a constant noise. It drowns out the subtle, internal voice that makes novel connections and sees patterns no one else can. It prevents the deep, unstructured thought from which genuine creativity and practical wisdom are born. The Stoics, while not speaking of creativity in the modern sense, placed immense value on a mind that is self-sufficient and resourceful, one that needs no external entertainment because it is rich with its own activity. Marcus Aurelius touched on this self-contained power when he wrote, "Look within, within is the fountain of good, ever ready to well up if you will ever dig." He was speaking of virtue, but the same principle applies to insight. The well is always there, but you can only hear its echo when you stop pouring other things into it. Think of the writer staring at a blank page for hours, the problem feeling utterly insoluble. In frustration, they finally get up and go for a long walk, with no phone, no podcast, just the rhythm of their steps and the quiet of their own mind. And it is there, in that state of what the world calls boredom, that the perfect solution, the missing plot twist, the elegant phrase, suddenly arrives, unbidden and fully formed. This is not a mystical event. It is the natural result of a mind that has been given the space to work on its own terms, free from the frantic demand for immediate output. Your brain, when not being fed a constant stream of content, begins to digest its own experiences, to sift through memories and ideas, and to forge new connections in the silence. That feeling of restlessness, that itch to be doing something, is not a signal of failure. It is the sign of a mind preparing to create. When was the last time a truly good idea, a clear solution to a stubborn problem, came to you not while you were actively working, but in the shower or on a drive, or simply while you were staring out a window, doing nothing in particular? Solitude forges resilience in the fires of your own discomfort. This is not an abstract idea, but a tangible, often difficult, training ground where your emotional strength is tempered. The Stoics understood that resilience is not built by avoiding hardship, but by learning to face it head-on, and solitude provides the perfect, controlled environment for this practice. They called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, a mental rehearsal where you intentionally contemplate potential losses and difficulties. The point is not to become pessimistic, but to remove the element of surprise and realize that you have the capacity to endure what life may bring. In the quiet of being alone, you can finally practice sitting with sadness or anger or fear, and learn the most vital lesson of all, that these emotions, however powerful, are storms you can withstand without shattering. Seneca, in his essay on the firmness of the wise man, captures this perfectly. He writes, "Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men. you must undergo the effect of a thing to know its quality. The soul is strengthened by overcoming challenges, not by avoiding them. Every time you choose to stay present with a difficult feeling instead of immediately reaching for your phone or turning on the television, you are placing another brick in the fortress of your own inner strength. Consider someone navigating the deep waters of grief after a profound loss. The immediate, instinctual reaction is to numb the pain, to call a friend, to lose oneself in work, to do anything but feel the raw, aching void. And while support is crucial, there comes a point where constant distraction becomes a way of refusing to process the loss. Now imagine that person, in a moment of courage, deciding to simply sit alone in a room and allow the grief to be there. They do not fight it, they do not feed it, they simply let the wave of sorrow wash over them. It is agonizing, but they do not break, and in the aftermath they discover a quiet, unshakable knowing that they can carry this weight. They have met one of the darkest emotions and found that they are still standing. This is the fortification of emotional resilience. You can begin this practice with the smallest of irritations. The next time you feel a physical itch or a craving for a snack or the impulse to check a notification, pause. Do not act on it for just a few minutes. Sit with the minor discomfort and simply observe the sensation without judgment. Notice the urgency, the squirming desire for relief, and then notice that you are the one observing it. You are not the itch, you are not the craving. You are the awareness that contains them. In that tiny space of non-reaction, you are building the same muscle that will one day allow you to face far greater storms with a steady heart and a calm mind. What minor discomfort have you been automatically avoiding today, and what would it feel like to just sit with it for a moment, to prove to yourself that you are stronger than it is? In the audience of none, the performance finally ends. All the energy you once poured into curating your image, into saying the right thing and laughing at the right jokes, is suddenly returned to you. You are no longer the charming colleague, the agreeable friend, or the put-together professional. Those are roles, costumes you wear for specific stages. In solitude, the curtain closes, the lights dim, and you are left standing backstage with only the raw materials of your own being. This is not a loss of identity, but the discovery of it. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, which for a rational human being means living with integrity, where your inner thoughts and your outer actions are in perfect harmony. Epictetus demanded this coherence from his students. He said, "Be one person, either good or bad. You must diligently work either on your own reasoning faculty or on things outward. You must either apply your primary effort to the condition within you or to the one outside you. That is, you must choose between the role of a philosopher or the role of an ordinary person." He is not saying you cannot function in society. He is insisting that you must not be a different person when you are in it. Think of the palpable feeling of relief when you close your front door after a long day of social obligations. You let your shoulders drop, you stop smiling on command, and you simply exist. That sigh is the sound of a mask being removed. It is the weight of a performance you did not even realize you were sustaining. In that quiet space, you are not required to be interesting or successful or perpetually cheerful. You can just be, and from this place of rest, a remarkable thing happens. When you return to the world, you do not have to pick the mask back up with the same desperation. You can engage with others from a foundation of authenticity, choosing your words and actions deliberately, not because you are performing, but because they align with the person you discovered in the quiet. Your conversations become more genuine, your relationships more substantive, because they are built on the bedrock of who you actually are, not on the shifting sands of who you think people want you to be. So, what is the mask you wear most often? Is it the mask of the expert who can never show uncertainty, or the people-pleaser who cannot say no, or the entertainer who feels responsible for the mood of every room? And more importantly, what quiet, genuine part of yourself does that performance most often hide from the world? Solitude is where you learn to be the absolute ruler of your own inner kingdom. This is the Stoic ideal of the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind built not of stone, but of unwavering judgment and self-command. When you consistently choose to be with yourself, you are not just passing time, you are actively constructing the walls of this personal stronghold, brick by brick, training yourself to govern the only territory you truly possess. Inside these walls, your peace is no longer held hostage by the chaos outside. The Stoics envisioned this as the ultimate freedom, a state where your happiness and worth are derived from your own virtuous character, a treasure that cannot be plundered by circumstance. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea, reminding himself that nowhere can a person find a more peaceful and untroubled retreat than in his own soul. He was not describing a place to hide from the world, but a command center from which to engage with it, unshaken. Imagine receiving two identical pieces of bad news, a significant financial setback. The mind dependent on externals, the one that has never sat in solitude, is immediately thrown into panic. Its sense of security was tied directly to that bank balance, and now that anchor is gone. It spirals into despair, blaming others, catastrophizing the future, its emotional state completely at the mercy of an event it could not control. Now, witness the sovereign mind receiving the same news. There is a pause, a moment of silence drawn from countless hours of practice. The initial feeling of alarm is noted, but it is not given command. The mind retreats into its inner citadel and begins its calm assessment. This is the situation. This is outside my direct control. What is within my power, my judgment of this event, my next actions, my resourcefulness, my courage? The setback is reframed not as a catastrophe, but as an obstacle on the path, an opportunity to practice the very virtues it has been strengthening in the quiet. The sovereign mind does not feel nothing, it feels everything with profound clarity, but it chooses its response from a place of principle, not from a place of panic. This is the power you cultivate when you rule your inner kingdom. So, as you imagine the fortress of your own mind, walk its perimeter. Where are the walls thin, easily breached by a critical comment or a minor inconvenience? Is it your need for constant validation that leaves a gate unguarded? Or is it your aversion to discomfort that creates a weak spot in your defenses? Identify that one vulnerability, because that is precisely where your next session of solitary rule must begin. Alone, a cup of tea becomes a ceremony, and sunlight through a window a gift. This is the quiet miracle that solitude performs. It pares life down to its essence, revealing a wealth of beauty in the most ordinary moments that our frantic pace normally obscures. In the absence of grand spectacles and constant entertainment, your senses recalibrate. You begin to notice the intricate pattern of steam rising from a simple mug, the gentle weight of a warm blanket, the profound silence between one breath and the next. This is not a regression into simplicity, but an advancement into a more refined state of awareness, a form of Stoic mindfulness that the ancients called the art of contentment. Marcus Aurelius, in his private meditations, consistently grounded himself in this practice. He did not list grand achievements or possessions he was thankful for. Instead, he wrote things like, "I have encountered good kinsmen, good brothers, a good wife, good children," or the fact that I did not make more progress in rhetoric and poetry and other studies, and that I restored the man who raised me to his office when he seemed to want it back. His gratitude was for relationships, for lessons learned from obstacles, for the capacity to act with justice. These are the fundamental goods, the pillars of a life well lived, and they are available to everyone regardless of their station. When you are constantly surrounded by noise and the pressure to acquire more, these foundational blessings become invisible. You are too busy chasing the next promotion, the newer car, the more exotic vacation to notice the perfect functioning of your own body, or the loyalty of a friend, or the simple freedom of a quiet morning. Solitude removes that clutter. It forces you to stop reaching for the next thing and to truly inhabit the one thing you already have, the present moment. Imagine someone sitting down to a plain meal of bread and soup after a day of quiet reflection. There is no television on, no phone to scroll through. The experience is not one of deprivation, but of profound richness. They taste the salt, the warmth, the texture, with an intensity that transforms the meal into a gift. They feel genuine appreciation for the farmers, the bakers, the very fact of nourishment. This is not a small thing. This is the practice of seeing the world as it truly is, stripped of the stories of lack and desire we usually project onto it. The Stoics understood that happiness is not found in having what you want, but in wanting what you have, and solitude is the master teacher that shows you exactly what it is you already possess. So take a quiet breath and consider this. What are 5 simple things you are grateful for at this very moment, things you would typically overlook on a busy, distracted day? The solid ground beneath your feet, the ability to see and to hear, the memory of a kindness, the quiet of the room you are in. Write them down not as a list but as a quiet acknowledgement. In that simple act, you are not just counting blessings, you are building the unshakable foundation of your inner citadel, one small, profound gift at a time. Solitude trades the whip of reaction for the compass of purpose. For years, you may have felt like a leaf in a storm, your day dictated by the ping of an email, the urgency in someone's voice, the endless scroll of demands and distractions. This is a life lived in reaction, a constant state of responding to external pressures that leaves you feeling drained and directionless. But in the quiet space you cultivate alone, that frantic cycle breaks. The noise fades, and for the first time you can hear the question that truly matters: what is my aim? This is the shift from being a passenger to becoming the architect of your own life. Seneca saw this with piercing clarity in his essay on the shortness of life. He lamented that people are busyness itself, active about other people's lives, but never stop to ask themselves for what purpose they are working. He observed, life is long if you know how to use it. That use is not about doing more, but about doing what aligns with a deliberate purpose. Without that internal compass, you are simply running on a treadmill. No matter how fast you go, you are not moving toward a destination of your own choosing. Consider someone who spends every weekday in a state of high alert, constantly putting out fires at a job they never consciously chose. They are praised for their reactivity, for their ability to handle crises. But in the solitude of a Sunday evening, a hollow feeling sets in. The crises will be waiting tomorrow, but what is any of it for? After a period of deliberate reflection, they make a terrifying and powerful choice. They leave that reactive environment to start a small, values-driven business. The decision is not made from impulse or a desire to escape, but from a deep, solitary conversation with their own principles. They are no longer reacting to the world's demands, they are acting from a purpose they defined for themselves. Their days are still full of work, but the quality of the effort is transformed. Every task, even the difficult ones, is now infused with meaning because it points toward a true north they discovered in the silence. So, look at your tomorrow. What is one single, purposeful action you can take? Something that comes not from your to-do list, but from your own inner compass. It does not need to be a life-changing leap. It could be the purposeful decision to spend 30 minutes on a skill that matters to you, or to have a difficult but necessary conversation you have been avoiding, or simply to protect an hour of your evening for quiet reflection instead of defaulting to the television. Choose one action that is yours and yours alone, an act of intention that plants a flag for the architect you are becoming. What if the thing you've been chasing is the very thing that's caging you? In the quiet of solitude, the endless race for more possessions, more status, more external validation finally grinds to a halt, and you are left to confront the stark reality of that pursuit. The Stoics saw this restless acquisition not as a path to happiness, but as a form of self-imposed slavery. Seneca, in his letters, wrote with piercing clarity about this trap. He said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. This poverty of the soul is not cured by adding more to your pile, but by subtracting the endless want itself." When you are alone, the advertisers cannot reach you, the curated lives on social media fade to black, and the neighbor's new car becomes utterly irrelevant. In that silence, you are left with the raw, unvarnished truth of your own experience, and a profound question emerges: how much do I actually need to be at peace? This is the heart of the Stoic virtue of temperance, the self-command to know what is sufficient and to find your freedom within those bounds. Imagine a person who has spent years feeling the subtle pressure to upgrade their life, to move from a perfectly comfortable apartment to a larger house with a bigger mortgage. They believe this next acquisition will finally bring them the contentment they seek, but in a moment of solitude, sitting in their quiet living room, a different realization dawns. The stress of the larger debt, the extra hours at work to afford it, the constant maintenance of a bigger space, this is the true cost. The peace they feel in this small, familiar room with a book and a cup of tea is not a lesser form of happiness, it is the real thing. The bigger house was not a goal, it was a cage they were enthusiastically building for themselves. Solitude reveals that your wealth is not measured by what you own, but by what you can joyfully do without. It teaches you to distinguish between a genuine need and a manufactured desire. So, take a moment and bring to mind one thing you are actively striving to acquire right now, whether it is a physical object, a promotion, or a certain level of recognition. Now look past the initial thrill of possession and ask yourself with brutal honesty, will this thing truly bring a lasting change to my inner world? Or is it just another temporary diversion, another link in a chain that keeps me running on a treadmill, believing the finish line is just one more purchase away? In deep solitude, you do not feel small, you feel part of something immense. That initial sense of being a solitary individual begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet awe as you recognize your place within an endless, breathing cosmos. This is not a feeling of insignificance, but one of profound belonging. The Stoics called this concept sympatheia, the understanding that the universe is a single, living, rational entity, and that we are all interconnected parts of this greater whole. Your own breath becomes part of the wind, your heartbeat a rhythm in a symphony too vast to hear. Marcus Aurelius often turned his mind to this cosmic scale to soothe his earthly anxieties. He wrote, "Frequently consider the connection of all things in the universe. Think of all things as interwoven and unified, for in a way, all things are mutually intertwined and therefore have a natural love for each other." A man standing alone feels his worries are the center of the world, but a man who sees himself as a single thread in a grand tapestry understands his struggles are part of a larger, beautiful pattern. Consider stepping outside on a clear night far from the city lights and simply gazing up at the sprawl of stars. You are standing on a small planet, circling one star among billions in a single galaxy, which itself is one among countless others. In that moment, the stressful email, the financial worry, the social slight does not vanish, but its scale is irrevocably altered. It is not that your problems are unimportant, but that they are held within a context so enormous it makes your inner turmoil feel less like a prison and more like a passing weather pattern within your own soul. This cosmic perspective is the ultimate antidote to self-absorption. It gently pulls you out of your own narrow story and invites you to see yourself as a citizen of the universe. So when you find a moment of quiet today, go to a window or step outside. Look at the sky or a tree or even the pavement teeming with unseen life. For just a few minutes, contemplate not your separation from what you see, but your fundamental connection to it. You are not a lonely island, but a conscious piece of the cosmos itself, looking back at itself in wonder. Solitude is the birthplace of thoughts that have never been thought before. Most of what we call thinking is simply the quiet repetition of ideas we have absorbed from our culture, our social circles, and the constant stream of media. These are not our own thoughts, they are echoes. True solitude, by its very nature, starves this echo chamber. With no one to parrot and no new input to consume, your mind has no choice but to begin generating its own original material. This is the forge of fierce intellectual independence, the very heart of the Stoic pursuit of wisdom. The philosopher Epictetus demanded this level of self-ownership from his students. He instructed them, do not be satisfied with a superficial understanding, do not casually assent to the prevailing opinions. He argued that an unexamined belief is not truly yours, it is a chain you have not yet noticed you are wearing. Wisdom for the Stoics was not about accumulating more information, but about developing the capacity to judge that information correctly, to see through the fog of popular sentiment and arrive at a truth you have verified for yourself. Consider a person trying to understand a complex and divisive social issue. In the public sphere, the debate is a shouting match between two entrenched sides. The algorithms feed them content that reinforces one narrative, and their social group expects them to hold a specific set of opinions. Then they deliberately step away. They spend a week consuming a wide range of perspectives on the issue in complete solitude, with no one to debate, no one to perform for. In that quiet, they are forced to sit with the contradictions, to weigh the evidence, and to listen only to the sound of their own reasoning. The opinion they eventually form may not fit neatly into either popular camp. It is nuanced, perhaps even contradictory, but it is authentically theirs, built on a foundation of their own critical inquiry rather than social pressure. This is the terrifying power of a mind that thinks for itself. It is not swayed by the crowd because its compass is calibrated to truth, not to tribalism. So, bring one of your own beliefs into the quiet space of your mind right now. Not a trivial preference, but a core assumption about politics, morality, or success. Can you trace its origin to a parent, a teacher, or a community? And are you willing to hold it up to the light of your own reason, to question it with the same rigor you would apply to a belief you find objectionable? Solitude murders the illusion that your real life is happening later. That persistent whisper, I will be happy when I get the promotion, when I find the right partner, when I finally have enough money, is exposed as a lie in the quiet. There is no future audience to applaud that future version of you. There is only the quiet room, the breath in your lungs, and the undeniable reality of this present moment. We are masters of postponement, treating our own lives like a book we will read tomorrow, constantly borrowing trouble from the future or regret from the past, while the only chapter we actually possess, the present one, goes unread. Solitude, by removing every distraction, forces you to open the book and start reading right now. This is the core of Stoic contentment, the understanding that a good life is not a destination to be reached, but a manner of traveling you can choose at any instant. Seneca saw this human folly with devastating clarity in his essay on the shortness of life. He wrote, "You are living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. You don't notice how much time has already passed, but squander it as though you had a full and overflowing supply." We act as if time were an infinite resource, always banking on a future that is not promised, while the present moment, the only time we truly own, slips through our fingers. The person who says they will start painting when they have time is waiting for a set of perfect conditions that will never arrive. But in solitude, with no one to judge the first clumsy strokes, that future fantasy collapses. The blank canvas is here, the paints are here, the desire is here. The only thing missing is the permission you have been refusing to grant yourself. So they pick up the brush not as a future painter, but as a person painting right now. The result does not matter in that moment. What matters is the act itself, the full inhabitation of a long-postponed dream finally brought into the present. This is the wise use of time, not as something to be killed or saved, but as the very substance of life itself to be lived. What is the one thing you tell yourself you will do someday when you have more time or more confidence or fewer responsibilities? Is it learning a language, writing that letter, or simply taking a long walk without a purpose? What is the single, smallest step you could take today, in the next hour, to pull that dream out of the vague future and plant it firmly into the reality of your now? In silence, you hear the whispers of what you truly want and the screams of what you merely crave. This is the profound clarity that solitude offers, a space where your most basic impulses are separated from the endless wanting that society implants in you. The Stoics understood that our turmoil does not come from the world itself, but from our desires and aversions attached to it. They made a critical distinction between desires that are natural and necessary for a flourishing life, like the need for wholesome food, shelter, and meaningful connection, and those that are vain and empty, like the hunger for luxury, constant praise, or fame. The natural desires are limited and easily satisfied. The vain ones are a bottomless pit, ensuring you remain perpetually restless and dissatisfied. Solitude acts as a master gardener for the soul, giving you the quiet space to identify each sprouting want and fear, and to consciously prune away the ones that do not serve your peace. Epictetus framed this as the very essence of freedom. He taught that freedom is not secured by filling your life with more possessions, but by correctly managing your desires and aversions. He said, freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of your desires, but by the removal of them. And again, do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do, and your life will go well. This is the discipline of assent, the practice of pausing before you automatically chase a desire or flee an aversion, and asking a simple, powerful question: is this in accordance with nature and reason, or is it a phantom created by my conditioning? Imagine someone sitting in their quiet apartment, feeling a familiar, gnawing restlessness. For weeks, they have been captivated by advertisements for a sleek, expensive new car, believing it would finally make them feel successful and admired. In the noise of daily life, this desire feels urgent and real. But in solitude, with no one to impress, the truth emerges. The desire is not for the car itself, but for the invisible stamp of approval they believe it carries. They see the hefty monthly payment not as a simple exchange of money, but as a chain that will bind them to longer hours and greater stress. In that quiet moment, they consciously choose to withhold their assent from this irrational desire. They do not fight it or suppress it, they simply see it for what it is, a socially conditioned ghost, and in that seeing, its power vanishes. The freedom they feel in that instant is more valuable than any car. So take a quiet breath and bring to mind one specific desire you are holding onto right now. Then, bring to mind one thing you actively try to avoid, a minor irritation or a larger fear. Look at each one with the clear, calm eyes of solitude. Ask yourself, is this desire for something I genuinely need for my well-being, or is it a want manufactured by comparison and the fear of being left out? And is my aversion to this thing truly a rational protection, or am I simply afraid of a little discomfort? The answer you find in that quiet space is the first step toward a freedom that no one can ever take from you. Solitude is the crucible where fear is transmuted into fuel. That intense, buzzing energy we label as fear or anxiety does not have to be a signal to retreat. In the quiet container of being alone with your thoughts, you can learn to hold that energy, examine it, and redirect its power toward courageous action. This is the alchemy of Stoic courage. Fear flourishes in the shadows of our avoidance, growing larger and more monstrous the longer we refuse to look at it. But when you sit with it in solitude, you bring it into the light. You see it for what it truly is, a collection of thoughts about a potential future, not the future itself. Seneca captured this perfectly in his letters, writing, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The thing you dread when confronted directly is almost never as vast or as final as your mind has made it out to be." Think of someone paralyzed by a fear of public speaking. In their normal life, they will do anything to avoid it, feeding the fear with every evasion. Then they commit to a period of solitude. They stand alone in a room and begin to speak their piece out loud to the empty chairs. The first time, their heart hammers, their voice shakes. But they do not stop. They do it again the next day and the next. In that safe, private space, they are not performing for a judgmental audience. They are simply practicing the act of speaking. They slowly dissect the fear. What is the core of it? Is it a fear of being judged, of forgetting a line? They analyze it until they understand its mechanics. And a remarkable shift occurs. The nervous energy, the adrenaline that once caused paralysis, begins to feel like a current of excitement. It is the same energy, but its character has changed because their relationship to it has transformed. It is no longer a master to be obeyed, but a fuel to be used. This is the embodied practice of courage. It is not the absence of fear, but the judgment that something else is more important than being afraid. So bring one of your own fears into the quiet of your mind right now. It could be a fear of failure, of a difficult conversation, or of financial insecurity. Now take out a piece of paper, real or imagined, and do two things. First, write down the absolute worst-case scenario your mind conjures. Be brutally honest. Then, right beside it, write the most likely, realistic outcome. The distance between those two lines is the territory where your imagination has been holding you hostage. By naming the worst, you rob it of its nebulous power. By acknowledging the likely, you ground yourself back in reality. In that clear space, you can finally ask the Stoic question. Given this reality, what is the courageous next step I can take, using this very fear as my energy to move forward? In the quiet, you can finally hear the most important whisper: your time here is limited. This is not a morbid thought, but the ultimate clarifier. The Stoics called this practice memento mori, a deliberate remembrance of your own death, and in solitude, it transforms from a philosophical concept into a visceral, personal truth. Without the noise of the world to drown it out, this awareness stops being a distant, abstract fear and becomes a powerful tool for shaping a life of purpose. It asks you the most urgent question possible. If your days are numbered, what are you doing with this one precious day? Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, constantly returned to this thought to ground his ambitions and soothe his anxieties. He wrote in his private meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He was not being dramatic. He was installing a mental mechanism for immediate priority checks. Is this argument worth my limited breath? Is this task aligned with my deepest values? Is this fear worthy of my finite attention? When you hold the reality of your end in mind, the trivialities that consume so much mental energy simply lose their grip. Consider a person who has carried a grudge against a sibling for years, each interaction laced with old resentment. In the busyness of daily life, the grudge feels like a permanent, unchangeable fact. But then they sit in true solitude and allow themselves to genuinely contemplate their own mortality. The question shifts from who was right to a far more piercing one. If I were to die soon, would I want this silence to be our final chapter? The answer, when it comes, is not born of guilt, but of a profound and sobering clarity. The grudge is revealed not as a shield, but as a pointless weight, a waste of the precious, irreplaceable time they have left. From that quiet space, they pick up the phone, not to win an argument, but to simply reconnect, understanding that the relationship itself is infinitely more valuable than being right. This is the power of memento mori. It forces you to live from the end backwards, making choices not for a hypothetical future, but for the life you are actually living right now. So bring this into your own quiet for a moment. If you knew for certain that you had just 1 year left to live, what is the one thing you would stop doing immediately? And what is the one thing you would finally, courageously begin? Solitude draws a bright, unbreakable circle around what is truly yours to command. Inside that circle exists only your mind, your choices, your values, and your voluntary actions. Everything else, the vast and noisy world of events, other people's opinions, and global circumstances, remains definitively outside. This is the ultimate refinement of your circle of influence, a clarity that only emerges when you are left alone with the raw facts of your own agency. You begin to see that anxiety is not a force that attacks you, but a signal that you are pouring your precious energy into the territory outside your walls, trying to command storms you were never meant to control. The core Stoic teaching from Epictetus becomes a lived reality, not just a philosophical idea. He stated that our own actions, our desires and aversions, our judgments and impulses are up to us. Our bodies, our possessions, our reputations, and what others do are not. In the quiet, this division is no longer an intellectual exercise. It is a practical map for preserving your peace. Consider someone consumed by the daily news cycle, feeling a constant, low-grade dread about a coming political election. They argue online, they refresh polling data. Their emotional state rises and falls with every headline, yet they feel utterly powerless. This is a life lived entirely in the circle of concern. Then they spend an afternoon in deliberate solitude, with no media, no distractions. In that quiet, the truth becomes undeniable. The final outcome of the election is not up to them. They cannot control the votes of millions. The frantic worry was a form of energy theft, draining them without producing any real result. From that clear space, a new question arises. What is within my power? Their own vote is within their power. A civil conversation with a neighbor is within their power. Volunteering for a local cause they believe in is within their power. The focus shifts dramatically from the uncontrollable outcome to the controllable actions. Their energy is no longer dissipated into the void. It is channeled into a focused beam of efficacy. Their sense of agency returns, not because the world has changed, but because they have finally learned where to stand. To make this real for yourself, take a moment of quiet and picture two concentric circles. In the small, inner circle, write down the things that are truly up to you, your effort, your attitude, your integrity. In the large, outer circle, list everything that concerns you but that you cannot command: the weather, the stock market, your boss's mood, the past. Just the act of drawing this boundary is a declaration of sovereignty. It is you reclaiming your mental territory and deciding, once and for all, where you will build your inner citadel. You emerge from solitude not hardened but firm, like a deeply rooted tree that bends in the wind but does not break. This is not the brittle rigidity of someone who refuses to listen, nor the aggressive defensiveness of someone with a fragile ego. It is a gentle but unshakable firmness, a calmness at your core that remains steady because it is anchored to something real within you. The storms of opinion and circumstance may rage around you, but your center of gravity has shifted inward. This is the Stoic ideal of equanimity in action, a soul that has become like a calm sea, as the philosopher Seneca described. He wrote that the ideal state of the soul is one of smoothness and calm, where it is like a tranquil sea, undisturbed by the winds of external events. This calm is not passive, it is a position of immense strength because it allows you to see clearly and choose your response from a place of principle, not panic. Consider someone who has dedicated time to this inner cultivation. They return to their work and present a project they have poured their heart into, only to receive harsh, public criticism from a colleague. The old version of them would have been devastated. Their entire day would have been ruined, their mind spinning with defensive arguments and a deep sense of personal failure. But the person who has built this inner firmness experiences the same event differently. They feel the initial sting, the flash of heat, but it does not consume them. They take a quiet breath, retreat for a moment into that inner calm they have practiced, and allow the criticism to settle. From that calm space, they can examine the feedback with detachment. Is there any useful truth here I can learn from? Or is this simply a reflection of the other person's own struggles? They are able to separate the message from the emotion with which it was delivered. Their response is not one of defensiveness or wounded pride, but of measured consideration. They might calmly acknowledge the feedback, or they might choose to simply let it pass without engagement, but they are not shattered by it. Their sense of worth was not on the table for review. Think back to a recent moment in your own life where you were profoundly affected by either high praise or sharp blame. Perhaps a compliment sent your mood soaring for hours, or a single critical comment cast a shadow over your entire week. Now, picture a more grounded version of yourself in that same situation. This firmer you hears the praise with gratitude but does not need it to feel whole. This you receives the criticism with curiosity but does not absorb it as a verdict on your soul. How would that inner stability have changed your reaction, your words, and the peace you carried away from that encounter? Solitude is the laboratory where you prove to yourself that joy requires no audience. We spend our lives on a frantic search, believing happiness is a destination reached through the right relationship, the perfect job, or the next major purchase. This external hunt keeps us perpetually leaning into the future, our contentment always one step ahead. But in the quiet, where none of those external props exist, a profound truth emerges. Joy is not something you find, it is something you build with the materials already in your possession. The Stoics called this state eudaimonia, a deep and lasting flourishing that comes from living in accordance with your own rational nature and virtue. It is an inside job, and solitude provides the incontrovertible evidence. Seneca put it with elegant simplicity, writing that a happy life is one in harmony with its own nature. This harmony is accessible to anyone in any circumstance because it depends solely on the quality of your own mind. It is the peace that comes from knowing you acted with integrity today, the quiet satisfaction of learning something new, the simple warmth of a memory that brings a smile, all generated from within without a single witness. Imagine a person taking a solitary walk through a park. There is no one to share the moment with, no photo to post, no story to tell later. Yet, as they walk, they notice the intricate pattern of frost on a leaf, feel the crisp air filling their lungs, and experience a sudden, unbidden surge of well-being. This feeling was not triggered by an accomplishment or a compliment. It arose from a mind that was fully present, unburdened by the need for external validation, and simply appreciating the raw experience of being alive. This is the cultivated joy of eudaimonia. It is the direct result of managing your perceptions, of choosing to see the world not as a series of problems to be solved, but as a source of endless, available wonder. So try this small experiment right now without moving from your spot. Can you generate a feeling of quiet contentment by focusing inward? Recall one small act of virtue from your day, perhaps a moment of patience when you felt irritated, or a small kindness you offered without expectation. Or simply bring your full attention to a simple pleasure, the feeling of your breath, the comfort of the chair you are sitting in, the silence surrounding you. This feeling, however faint, is yours to command. It is the foundation of a happiness that no external circumstance can ever take from you. From the vantage point of solitude, how big does that old grudge really seem? The petty resentment you've been carrying, the one that flares up every time you think of a certain person or a past insult, begins to lose its shape in the quiet. The story you've been telling yourself, the one where you are the wounded hero, starts to feel thin and rehearsed. This is because resentment is a fire that needs constant fuel, the oxygen of rumination and the dry tinder of a narrow perspective. In solitude, that fuel supply is cut off. You are left with the embers of the event itself, and from this calm distance, you can finally see it for what it is, a small moment in a vast life, often caused by another person's own ignorance or pain. Marcus Aurelius offered a powerful antidote to this wasteful energy. He reminded himself in his private writings, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. This was not a cynical view of humanity, but a realistic one rooted in understanding. He saw that harmful actions almost always spring from a mistaken judgment about what is good, a form of spiritual blindness. To be angry at someone for being blind is as pointless as being angry at the rain for being wet. When you internalize this, forgiveness ceases to be something you grant as a favor to another person and becomes a gift of peace you give to yourself. Picture someone lying in bed, unable to sleep as they replay an argument from years ago with a former friend. The old scripts run on a loop, each rehearsed line making their chest tighten. But then, in a moment of deliberate solitude, they stop fighting the memory. They let the scene play out in the quiet of their mind, but this time they view it from this new, Stoic vantage point. They consider that their friend acted from a place of their own fear or insecurity. They see the smallness of the original offense against the backdrop of their entire shared history. And in that spacious quiet, a simple, powerful decision forms. They consciously choose to release the anger. They might even mentally whisper, "I wish you well." The weight that lifts is not the weight of the other person's action, but the weight of the story they have been carrying about it for years. This is not about condoning bad behavior, but about refusing to let that behavior continue to poison your inner world long after the event is over. So bring to mind one person you hold a minor resentment toward. It does not have to be a monumental betrayal, just a lingering irritation. Now, in the quiet space of your own mind, consider what it would feel like to consciously, deliberately, release your claim on that grievance. Not for their sake, but for your own peace. What small piece of your mental territory would you reclaim? Solitude gives you a lens that sees the philosophy in every moment. The world stops being a chaotic sequence of random events and starts to look like a meticulously designed training ground for your character. This is the sharpening of your philosophical eye, a perceptual shift where you begin to automatically scan your experience not for pleasure or pain, but for virtue. The Stoic sage was considered a perpetual student of life, treating every single encounter, no matter how mundane, as a lesson in wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance. In the quiet of your own company, you can rehearse this way of seeing. You can take a past conflict and review it, not to relive the anger, but to ask, where could I have been more just? You can contemplate a future challenge and inquire, how can I meet this with courage? This is not passive reflection, it is active mental training. Consider the universal annoyance of being stuck in traffic. The untrained mind defaults to a narrative of frustration. It curses the delay, views other drivers as obstacles, and allows the situation to poison the entire morning. The mind honed in solitude, however, sees the same scenario through a different lens. It recognizes the traffic as a thing outside its control, an external indifferent. It then immediately turns inward and asks the core Stoic question, what is the virtuous response here? This is an opportunity to practice patience, a form of temperance. It is a chance to practice acceptance, an expression of wisdom. It might even be a moment to practice a small justice by allowing another car to merge without resentment. The event has not changed, but your perception of it has been utterly transformed, and with it, your entire experience. Your philosophical eye learns to find the gymnasium in the gridlock. So, bring to mind one common daily annoyance in your own life. Perhaps a long line at the grocery store, a noisy neighbor, or a repetitive household chore. Now reframe it. Look at it through this newly sharpened lens. Which of the four Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance, could this exact situation be inviting you to practice? Solitude is a chosen discomfort that makes all other comforts sweeter. You are not running from hardship, but inviting a manageable portion of it into your life to prove a fundamental point to yourself, that you are more resilient than your cravings for ease would have you believe. This deliberate practice is the heart of the Stoic concept of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics were not masochists, they were pragmatists. They understood that a life of pure, unbroken comfort makes the soul soft and unprepared for the inevitable storms of fate. So they would periodically practice poverty by sleeping on a hard floor, or fast from food, or wear thin clothes in the cold. The Roman teacher Musonius Rufus championed this training, arguing that to practice hardship is to build a fortress within. He said that one who would be self-controlled must practice not loving luxury, and one who would be courageous must practice despising hardship. The goal was never to suffer for its own sake, but to remove the fear of suffering, and in doing so, to rediscover the profound richness of simple things. A warm bed feels infinitely more luxurious after a night on a hard mat. A simple meal tastes like a feast after a day of fasting. Solitude is our most accessible modern equivalent to this ancient training. It is a voluntary exile from the constant comfort of distraction. Think of someone who decides to spend a full Saturday completely alone, with no plans, no streaming services, and no social outings. The first few hours are a battle. Boredom itches at them, restlessness screams for a screen. They are forced to sit with the awkwardness of their own company. But if they persist, a shift occurs. The frantic need for entertainment subsides, and a quiet calm takes its place. They might notice the way light moves across the room, or find a forgotten curiosity returning. When they finally reunite with friends or family that evening, the connection feels deeper, the conversation more meaningful. The simple comfort of companionship is now something they actively appreciate, not just a default state they took for granted. This is the alchemy of voluntary discomfort. It transforms ordinary life into a series of gifts. So, what is one small, voluntary hardship you could introduce into your week? It does not need to be dramatic. It could be a 1-minute cold shower at the end of your morning routine, a conscious decision to skip a meal and sit with the sensation of hunger, or simply leaving your phone at home during a walk. The point is not the act itself, but the conscious choice to practice resilience, to remind your soul that you possess a strength that does not depend on perfect conditions. Solitude is the loom on which the scattered threads of yourself are woven into one strong fabric. Every day, we engage in a subtle but exhausting performance, code switching between the professional self at the office, the easygoing self with friends, the responsible self with family. Each role requires a different mask, a different vocabulary, a different set of expectations to manage. The mental energy required to maintain this cast of characters is immense, leaving you feeling fragmented, like a house divided against itself. But in the sustained quiet of being alone, the stage empties and the audience vanishes. The need for these separate performances dissolves. The professional, the friend, the child, the parent, all these fragments are brought into the same quiet room and forced to reconcile. You are no longer performing for a segmented world. You are simply being with your own mind. Out of that confrontation emerges a single, coherent identity, a person whose inner thoughts and outer actions begin to align into one consistent whole. This is the Stoic ideal of integrity, where you are the same person in the dark as you are in the light. The philosopher Epictetus demanded this very unity from his students. He said, "Be one person, either good or bad. You must diligently work either on your own reasoning faculty or on things outward. You must either apply your primary effort to the condition within you or to the one outside you." That is, you must choose between the role of a philosopher or the role of an ordinary person. He was not saying you cannot function in society, but that you must not be a different person when you are in it. The peace that comes from this integration is profound. The social anxiety that once plagued you, the fear of saying the wrong thing or being found out as an imposter, begins to fade. It is replaced by a quiet confidence that comes from knowing the person you present to the world is not a performance, but a genuine reflection of who you are. You no longer have to remember which version of yourself you are supposed to be with which group, because there is only one version. There is a tremendous relief in no longer negotiating the gap between your internal state and your external presentation. Think about the different social spheres of your own life. Do you feel like the same person at work, with your closest friends, and with your family? If you notice a difference, ask yourself where that divergence comes from. Is it a fear of judgment, a desire for approval, or an old story about who you are supposed to be in that context? That gap is the space where your energy leaks out, and its closing is the moment you become truly, terrifyingly whole. In the quiet, you take back the pen and begin writing your own story. For years, perhaps for your entire life, you have been acting out a script written by someone else. Your parents defined success for you, your culture handed you a checklist for happiness, and your past experiences convinced you of your own limitations. You have been playing a character, but the role was never truly yours. Solitude is the editing room where you finally read that script under a clear light and decide, line by line, what stays and what gets rewritten. This is the ultimate practice of Stoic self-determination, where you move from being a passive character to the active author of your existence. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius reflected on this when he wrote, "Remember that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within your way of thinking." He was pointing to this authorial power. The Stoics used the metaphor of life as a play. They believed that while you cannot control the overall plot, the fates, or the other actors, you have absolute sovereignty over how you play your part. You can play it with resentment, complaining about your lines, or you can play it with virtue, bringing courage, wisdom, and justice to your role, no matter what the script throws at you. Consider someone who was told throughout their childhood that they were not the creative type. This became a core part of their identity, a line in their personal script they never questioned. They pursued a safe, analytical career, all the while feeling a quiet, persistent ache of something missing. Then they spend a weekend alone with no one to perform for. Out of sheer boredom or perhaps a deep, forgotten impulse, they pick up a pencil and a blank notebook. The first marks are clumsy, but in the silence there is no critic to hear, no childhood voice to mock the effort. They simply draw, and in that act they are not being creative, they are doing creativity. They are actively writing a new line into their story, one that directly contradicts the old narrative. They are not waiting for permission or a talent scout to discover them. They are, in that quiet room, authoring a new truth about themselves. This is the terrifying power of taking narrative control. It asks you to identify the old story you have been telling yourself. Is it the story of the victim, forever wounded by a past event? Is it the story of the imposter, destined to be found out? Or is it the story of the people-pleaser, whose worth depends on universal approval? In solitude, you can hold that old manuscript in your hands and see it for what it is, a draft, not a final edition. So take a moment of quiet right now and write one sentence, just one, that captures the old narrative you have been living. Then, directly beneath it, write one sentence that describes the new story you want to author. The space between those two lines is where your freedom lies. The final, terrifyingly powerful truth solitude reveals is that you were always enough. All the striving for the next promotion, the yearning for a different body, the hunger for more likes and louder applause, is just a frantic, outward search for a feeling of internal completeness. We chase these external validations hoping they will finally fill a hole we feel inside, a sense of lack that we believe can only be plugged by something from the outside world. But solitude, by systematically removing every single one of those external props, forces you to turn inward and discover the wellspring that was there all along. It is your capacity for reason, your ability to choose virtue, your unassailable power of judgment. This is the Stoic ideal of autarkeia, or self-sufficiency, and it is the bedrock of a free life. Seneca captured this divine independence when he wrote that the man who is content with himself is a god to himself. He is not saying you become arrogant or stop caring for others. He means you become the source of your own peace and worth, a fortress that needs no external supplies to remain standing. This realization is terrifying because it annihilates every excuse you have ever used. You can no longer blame your unhappiness on your boss, your bank account, or your past. The responsibility for your fulfillment lands squarely and permanently in your own lap. But with that responsibility comes an unshakable confidence. When you know in your bones that you are enough, the winds of fortune lose their power to devastate you. Praise does not inflate you because your worth is not for sale. Criticism does not shatter you because your value was never up for a vote. Your peace becomes a deep, still lake, its surface barely rippled by the passing storms of external events. So sit quietly for just a moment right where you are. Let your breath settle and try to feel, even if it is just a flicker, the the profound truth that you are complete and sufficient exactly as you are in this very moment, with all your perceived flaws and all your quiet strength. This feeling, however fleeting, is the signature of your own sovereignty. This terrifying power is simply the unshakable confidence of radical self-reliance. You have journeyed from seeking applause in a crowded room to finding sovereignty in a quiet one. This transformation was never about retreating from the world, but about building an inner citadel so strong that you can engage with life more fully, more freely, and more fearlessly than ever before. You have traded the fragile mask of performance for the unbreakable foundation of character. The journey through solitude has dismantled the architecture of your fears, replacing it with a profound understanding that true contentment was always an inside job, a treasure buried not in some distant future, but within the quiet territory of your own mind. This is the final, seamless integration of the Stoic path, where your inner constitution becomes the source of your happiness, regardless of the storms that rage outside. Marcus Aurelius offered a perfect summation of this hard-won state, writing, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Your constitution is your own. Your peace is your own. Your story is now your own to write. So, as you move forward from this moment, how will you carve out your own space for purposeful silence? Where will you find just 5 minutes today to sit with yourself, to listen, and to fortify the ruler of your inner kingdom? We would be honored to hear from you. In the comments below, share which single personality shift resonated with you the most. Your journey is part of a larger conversation, a community quietly building its own unshakable foundations, one moment of solitude at a time.